All right, everyone, welcome to another edition of the Good Life Small Business Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Blakely, and I am pleased to be joined today by Carole Sprunk, who is a serial entrepreneur, owner of Clout Coffee in Omaha, but also runs Edge Magazine and Dine Magazine in Omaha as well. So, Carole, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So let's get to know you a little bit before we get into your businesses. What books are you reading or listening to right now?
I'm about halfway through The Alter Ego Effect and just starting the book High Hanging Fruit.
I see.
Yes.
I haven't heard of either one of those.
So what I'm loving about The Alter Ego Effect right now is it's talking about like who do you need to become to do what you need to do. So when you think when you're little and you're trying to figure out what you want to be when you grow up, sometimes you go into that character and you act a little bit. And in business, when we want to grow outside of our comfort zone or do something different, sometimes we need to put on that alter ego and become that person until we actually become that person. So I'm really liking that book.
Interesting. And
High Hanging Fruit is by the founder of I'm going to mispronounce it, maybe Zico Coconut Water.
Okay.
So a beverage industry, which is where I'm at. So I love reading about others who have sort of paved their way. He brought coconut water, like healthy coconut water options to the United States back in, I think, 2004 or 2005, something like that, and then was recently acquired by Coke.
Nice.
So both good books for different reasons.
Very cool. How about podcasts? Do you listen to much or many podcasts?
A couple. I like to read like in print more than, I liked audiobooks for a while when I'm busy working out or something like that. I like to listen to some different things. So I'm listening to, there's an Omaha podcast that I listen to. I've been a guest on Fran of the Heartland podcast, so I've listened to a few of those episodes, and I try to go back and listen to ones that are maybe a little bit more localized or relevant to my industries.
Got it. Very cool. All right, let's get to know more about you and your businesses more. You can take us as far back as you would like. Just kind of let us know your journey as an entrepreneur, where it's led you, and kind of where we're at today.
Yeah. Well, I think when I think back from my whole life, I think I've always kind of been an entrepreneur. I've always been a problem solver and had to overcome some kind of adverse situations in my childhood, and turning 30 was really sort of like a turning point for me, where I was really thinking, I'm going to work and I'm working and I bring home money and that's it. And I wanted to figure out how I could make money without actually having to go to work.
Yeah.
And then how could I make that last longer? How could I make sure I'm always bringing in money no matter what? And so I, had a day job and I cleaned at night for extra money and exercise. And that's when I really absorbed a lot of audiobooks on business and stuff, and found a magazine in Omaha for sale in 2015 and became obsessed with it, and finally got to purchase it at the end of 2016. I second mortgaged my house to do that. But I knew I wanted to be part of the platform that could tell people's stories and put people in a good light. And it's history. We think of like what our kids will be going through 20, 30 years from now, and the things that we were proud of, and maybe publications that we've been in and books we've been in, and on and on. So just knowing that when we're telling someone's story, we're part of their history and their legacy, and that's awesome. But also knowing that I wanted to create a different type of revenue from a product-based business. I got pretty obsessed with figuring out how to brand my own product-based business and start my mornings with coffee and end my days with bourbon. And one morning it clicked, and it's been almost 5 years now, but we have a barrel-aged coffee roastery right here in Omaha, Nebraska. And somewhere in the mix of all that, we started a food and beverage magazine, because why not?
Right.
And I don't know what else you want to know about them.
Very cool.
But
So was Edge the magazine that you bought originally?
yes.
Okay.
Yep. I bought it from the founder. He started the magazine 2013, was ready to sell it 2015. By the end of 2016, we had it kind of worked out, and we'll be celebrating 10 years this October.
Got it. So what does Edge focus on as far as the people that are reading that magazine?
So Edge Magazine is West Omaha's affluent premier lifestyle magazine. So we're showcasing high value homes in the West Omaha area, youth. So we always have a youth section, and Varsity Corner, which is athletes throughout West Omaha, and business and food and cocktails and nonprofits. And there's really just something for everyone. And coming from having a newspaper background a lot of years ago, in the newspaper world, bad news is what sells, and that's disappointing to me. So I'm in the space now of sharing good news, and I like that. So it's all good from cover to cover.
Very
it's not
cool.
critical in any way.
Good. We could use more of that for sure.
Right. Yeah.
Talk about so getting into coffee with Clout. How did that? I mean, just kind of talk about the process of. You say it clicked one morning. Where did it go from there? Like, how do you get into the process of, and what exactly is Clout? What makes Clout different?
Yeah. So I was managing a private label for a pet treat company, and that's where, I was in charge of sourcing ingredients and negotiating prices and on. And that's where it was the idea of creating my own brand. And I wanted to private label. I wanted to get, and everything is from any store brand you buy anywhere is produced somewhere else. I mean, it's you can white label anything you want in this world anymore. So that's what I wanted to do. I didn't ever want to get into the production side of things and the manufacturing side of it. But everywhere I turned, I hit a roadblock. And by then I had already, I wanted to have a name that was powerful and it was purposeful. And I landed on Clout because when I looked up synonyms for the word power, Clout was a synonym. And I was like, well, it starts with a C. So Clout Coffee, it makes sense. And then from there, it was just designing a logo and all the things. And everywhere that I turned to try to private label, I found that I didn't either enjoy the product enough to put my own brand on it, or I was running into logistical issues, shipping and quantities and pricing and on and on and on. And I mentioned to my graphic designer one day that I was having problems finding a solution, and he said, well, I know someone locally that roasts coffee. They might be willing to give this a chance and figure this out for you. And I said, sure. So asked him, and he said, yes, I'll do that. I'll figure that out for you. And so I was like, well, now I got to get a barrel. And I had seen barrels before, but I was not really putting two and two together. And I went down to Brickway to get my very first barrel, and I had my minivan. So we had to put all the seats down in my minivan and drive this barrel across town with the rusty barrel rolling back and forth in my van.
Yeah.
It was awful. And they're very heavy. But one barrel down, and today we just filled barrel 146.
Nice.
Yeah.
Very cool.
So we've had a lot to figure out along the way, and you start off with this idea, and people try it and they like it, so they want more and they tell their friends, and it's growth one day at a time.
Yeah, absolutely. Very cool.
Yeah.
Is this what you thought it would be?
No.
It's
a lot more work, actually.
Yeah.
Hindsight, man, I tell you, people that are in service-based industries or tech industries, there's so much more margin to be made, and not near as much work that has to go into it. In a product-based business, so many components have to come together, And it's hard. And I feel like in this town, or not just this town, but the state even, there's just not any focus on CPG. Like, where are all my other product founders at? And can we get together regularly and talk about these things? And maybe even go in on our packaging orders together or something for bulk buys. Like,
define CPG.
Consumer packaged goods.
Okay.
So it's anything like that you would buy to eat or drink, or like candles, things like that, just products.
Got it.
And it's a lot more work than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have any experience in as far as, and talk about some of the challenges as far as getting into retail spaces? Did you have any experience in that really before you got into it with Clout?
No. So the company that I had worked for had already established those relationships. So it really, at the end of the day, it comes down to who you know, and then it becomes what you know. Retail is very difficult in my space because in a grocery store, you know, they only have so much room for coffee, and big companies own most of that real estate in stores. I mean, it's you think of like what takes up 90% of the shelf, and I mean, you're competing against people that could squash you in a second with marketing dollars that you can't even realize. So I read a really good book several months ago called Ramping Your Brand, Writing the Killer CPG Growth Curve. And it talks about, you know, growing roots first and growing deep with your customers and getting to know them before you start to scale into retail. So going into a big box store right away could actually be a nightmare for you. Logistically, financially, and if you don't get repeat orders, and I mean, it's great getting into stores, but then you got to get off the shelf quickly.
Talk about, I guess, you're going store to store to store, and you're going in. How are you pitching yourself when it comes to your product, or how does that work? I've never done it, so I'm curious.
Yeah, so like locally, it's about building those relationships, right? And some stores cannot make a decision locally like that. You would have to go to the coffee buyer at a meeting, and you might have to pay a lot of money just to get that meeting. So it, like Hy-Vee, for instance, which is a Midwest grocery store, their individual stores can make individual decisions. So you can go around and get those, get into some of them. And it's really just about defining, like, where does your ideal customer shop, and building it out, and then just leaning on other people that do what you do, because that is, I mean, locally, you know, I've got a couple of people, friends and mentors locally who are product-based people who've kind of gone before me a little bit, so I can ask them questions. And Grow Nebraska, you know, I was just at the Market Tech conference, and there were several other product-based businesses there, and they are years ahead of me. So it's asking them some questions and listening to what they have to say. And I mean, if you're already not in retail, just start asking.
Right.
Because, I mean, if they say no, you're not any worse off than where you were, but maybe you can get a little education along the way. And when I want to get into stores, I ask them, can I do an event with you? Can we collaborate on some things together from a social media standpoint? So going into like locally owned stores is a little bit easier than big box store, and it allows you to get to know your customer a little bit better too. Yeah.
But we were talking before we hit record, you've kind of branched out and you've done some things with breweries and things like that as well. So outside the box.
Yeah. So, you know, because I'm a barrel aged coffee company, and we do bourbon, rye, rum, and whiskey barrel aged coffee, I don't want to run where the other coffee brands are right now. So going into, we're attending the second year this year at the Midwest Cigar Fest. That's a great place for us to be, because coffee and cigars is like the number one pairing, and I had thought it was alcohol and cigars, but it's actually coffee. So that's a great place for us to be, right? So these breweries. First Street Brewing in Hastings was the first brewery to do their Popular Blonde with our coffee in it, and it was awesome. And I don't even like that type of beer, but it was great. And we did a collaboration with Brickway before, and we're getting ready to do another one. So Brickway is doing a coffee vanilla pilsner this Wednesday in their tap room. And it's that for me is going where your customers go. We're a craft coffee, so on the shelf we are more expensive than all your other kinds of coffee. I'm almost $30 a pound online, so it's not an inexpensive coffee by any means, but craft beer drinkers also are prepared to spend more money on beer than, because they're not buying mainstream. They're buying someone's blood, sweat, and tears, and that's what you're buying when you buy Clout Coffee is somebody's relentless effort to claw their way to the top.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think that's great too with what, you've got a different product, and so going outside of just the normal retail stores and getting in with the breweries and, just finding different avenues where you can place your product, that's part of the fun. Yeah, we do a lot of sales volume in liquor stores and things of that nature. Because again, like I use this analogy to so many people. When you go into like Bath and Body Works and you want to buy a bottle of lotion, you'll spend $15 on it and you won't even complain. Right. But you go into Walmart and $15 for a bottle of lotion would irritate you because the expectation is different. So for me, if our coffee can be placed in an area where the expectation is there, then the sell-through will be better. We've had some poor placements in liquor stores where maybe they're known just for selling very inexpensive beer. Well, then our coffee is not going to do well there. Right. So if we can be next to the higher end bottles of alcohol and provide a more unique experience and a gift option, then the perceived value is there. Yeah, absolutely. Were you open during the pandemic? Yes. Yeah. We're not a coffee shop where people can come in, and when people do walk in because they think we're a coffee shop, I make them a K-cup, and I'm like, that's the extent of my barista abilities. But we did, I think, better in 2020, but for a variety of reasons. We got a different capital infusion into the company, and so that allowed me to buy some different inventory and scale on Amazon a little bit more. Okay. So we did better, but as an e-commerce brand, that's how we started, as a website and then on Amazon and Walmart.com and things like that. And so now we're kind of expanding into some retail. Got it. Did you have to make many changes? Were there adjustments that you had to make because of how just the economy shifted? I don't think so. Not for the coffee brand anyway. The magazines were obviously different. We struggled a little bit. We lost some advertising clients. And we were hosting in-person events with the magazines, and that had to come to a screeching halt. Sure. I remember, the one thing that changed during the pandemic with the coffee business is that we were just starting to do some brunch collaborations with local restaurants where they were going to do coffee cocktail flights and things of that nature. And we had just done our second one the weekend before everything shut down. And I remember, I don't get too wrapped up in the news because I'm just going to, keep doing what I'm doing. Right. And I remember there being some talk about this thing and people were getting a little nervous. And it was really present that day during the brunch because there were very few diners, and it was very slow for them that day. And even they had said, this is not, we think that this has something to do with this virus. And I was kind of unaware because I live in my own bubble most of the time. But so that was the only thing. We're just now starting to get back to trying to do these collaborations and events again. Have you had a good reception on that, or have you put one together, or is it just kind of getting things lined up?
So we have not done a brunch collaboration since 2020. But we've done a few other things, and that's good. It gets people together. When we launched our Nitro Cold Brew, we had an event for that, and then I sold out of the inventory, but I don't have enough cash flow to keep that product going until I can get cold storage and all these other things. But otherwise now we're just sort of kicking off these brewery collaborations.
Yeah. Have things picked up with the magazine, kind of back to maybe where they were?
Yes. We hosted our anniversary event back in October for Edge Magazine, and kind of getting back to seeing, it really before the events were in collaboration with business partners or advertising partners. So it's really just seeing what they want to do and working with them to accomplish that.
Very cool. What's something that you wish you were better at with your one business or all your businesses? What's something you wish you were better at?
Understanding financials. I hate it. Oh, I do. But I started this year saying just get a little bit better each day. Yeah. Just one thing you can get better at. And you don't have to be great at it all at once. Just if you understand what this line item means and how it affects others, and I work with my bookkeeper pretty closely and to better understand it, because I don't like the word budget and I don't or taxes or any of those other things, but
kind of is a drain on the creativity when you budget sometimes.
Well, and I feel like being such a small company and having to wear so many hats, when you have to spend so much time doing the things that drain you, it makes it really hard to get the energy to go do the things that don't drain you.
Right.
So I'm like, where's my person at? Where's my person who offsets? Like, I like bringing different people to the table with different talents and letting people shine at what they're good at.
Yeah. Was there one thing that happened, or did you just kind of get to a place where you're like, I just have to be better about this even though I don't want to?
Yeah, I mean, reading books that tell you, you're never going to, it's kind of like that in the alter ego effect book. If your goal is to become like X or like so-and-so or whatever your big goal is, who do you have to become to do that? And so I also think, okay, give yourself a little bit of grace, because you're just starting to figure this out. There are people much younger than me that have figured out a lot more, but you can only start from where you're at and go forward. Yeah.
And the reason I asked that question is because whether it's marketing, whether it's financials, whether it is, maybe just stepping away and becoming a better business owner or whatever, you wear so many hats and there's so many things that you have to do, but you can't do them all. And so it doesn't matter who the person is. There's just something that either they're not good at it or it is draining to them. And it's just, it interests me to hear how people, some people wish they were a lot better at marketing. They get so wrapped up in doing the work that they don't market like they should, or it's the financials or whatever it is. So you just can't do everything.
Well, and it's hard. And unfortunately, I have to do everything. I don't have a whole lot of, I don't have the resources to hire additional talent. So you just have to go, okay, well, I might be kind of crappy at this one thing, but if I give it my best and I try to get better and I fail, but I get up after I fail and I dust myself off and say, okay, well, that was a lesson learned. And now we are going to move forward. And I want to know these things. I want to be very hands-on with my company, and I want to get better at all the things so that when I am ready to grow and hire, and then I'll know exactly who I'm looking for to fill that position for me. And it's, doing what you have to do until you can do what you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And sometimes you just got to do it all.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, if you could go back to day one, what would be one piece of advice that you would give yourself? Or would you just let things go as they have?
One piece of advice that I would give myself is understanding the funding stages and understanding that growth is good, but growth calls for new amounts of capital. And so understanding what your equity is worth and what your future equity is worth. I think I was so wrapped up in creating a product, and I was so excited about it that I wasn't really thinking, like, what happens when you do sell a lot of it? And it takes so many days to make new. Where does that cash come from? And that's something I probably... But then maybe I wouldn't have... I think a lot of people hesitate on starting a business because they start thinking about all those things. And they don't just do it. And my advice would be, like, just do it.
Yeah.
Figure it out as you go, but just do it and make some mistakes. It's funny later. I made some mistakes, 4.5 years ago that I can laugh at now, but it really wasn't funny at the time.
Right, yeah. But there's, it's weird to say that growth within your company is sometimes can hinder you, or it can be a challenge, but not being able to grow or scale, I think that's just part of it, especially with retail. Scaling is just something that you hope you get to that point, but you don't necessarily plan for it, and so it can be challenging.
Right.
Yeah.
For sure.
So someone comes to you and they say, I want to start a business. What advice are you going to give them? One piece of advice you would give them?
Grow your network.
Yeah.
Get to know a lot of people. And even you might think that getting to know somebody isn't going to benefit you directly right then and there. You don't know what 3 or 4 years down the road might do for you. I am developing relationships now where the connection, I met them several years ago. So growing your network, get to know people, especially people in your space. It doesn't even necessarily have to be competition. It could just be industry-wise, right? But your network is your net worth.
Yeah. Did you have a big network when you started?
Kind of, yeah. When I bought Edge Magazine, I lived 2 hours away. I didn't even live in town, so I had to come up to Omaha 1 or 2 times a week and network. And be in all the things and sponsor all the things and go to all the things. And I just got to know as many people as I absolutely could. And that has paid off. I feel like I'm well networked locally. And I hope to only, grow that nationally.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it is important to, and it's, even if it is someone in your industry, I've said this before on the podcast, but I think you'd be surprised. There's people out there that are willing to help, and they may not give you the whole recipe, but they're willing to help you maybe not stumble along the way like they did.
Well, and that's my bigger goal for Clout. I want to get the company to the point of profitability so that I could perhaps host a pitch competition on a quarterly basis or something like that, where I can give proceeds to another startup entrepreneur. My goal for that company, long-term goal, would be to go back and help people who are doing what I'm doing right now. Because if I could go to a pitch competition and win a couple $1,000s for something, and I enter all the things. I am trying to win all those things myself. I'm trying to pitch. I'm trying to do all the things. And so I want to be, I think that's my legacy. That's how I want to leave it, is I want to be able to go back and help other people that are trying to make a name for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. Very cool. How can we find out more about you, about Clout, about the magazines, social media, websites? Where do we go?
Well, for starters, you can go to carolesprunk.com. That is just a little about me and the companies with direct links to those other companies. But cloutcoffee.com is our e-commerce website. And then the magazines, it's edgemagazine.com and dinenebraska.com.
Got it. Very cool. Hey, thanks so much for taking the time. It's a pleasure to get to know you, to come in and kind of see things and just hear about your spirit and your business. It's really cool. So thanks for your time.
Thanks so much for having me as a guest.
Absolutely. Best of luck.
Thank you.